So what are some of the top things that you look for in your clients in terms of
Mhm.
correlation for leaky gut?
Well, I think a big one is I think there's a common misunderstanding that because we're talking about the gut and leaky gut, people assume they have to be having digestive symptoms.
Right.
And, a lot of people do.
Mhm.
And a lot of people actually have digestive symptoms and don't even realize they're having symptoms because it's their normal.
Right.
So it still surprises me when I talk to folks. We always talk about poop, right?
Yeah.
How often you go to the bathroom. And, certainly there are still folks who tell me, oh, I go regularly. And when I ask what regularly means, they tell me, oh, once or twice a week. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, there's a symptom right there.
Yeah.
But, so some people have digestive symptoms and don't even realize they're having digestive symptoms because they think it's normal. But as I was saying originally, there are so many other symptoms beyond digestive. And I would say, don't you think the other symptoms are actually more common? It's those symptoms that create inflammation in the body. So people who have a lot of the skin issues, whether
Mm,
it's acne, rosacea, unexplained rashes, even hives,
yeah.
brain fog is huge. We know there's
Yeah.
a brain and gut connection. Fatigue, even mood disturbances, seasonal allergies,
Yeah.
so many symptoms. Those are probably some of the biggest that I see with my
Mhm.
clientele, and I would imagine similar with you.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point that there's a distinction between symptoms and what we would call systemic
Right.
symptoms, which occur everywhere and they don't seem like they're connected, but they are. Um, and those gut symptoms that you were talking about, like constipation, we think gas, bloating,
Right.
indigestion, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. I often think of those symptoms as not necessarily signs of leaky gut per se, but signs that the conditions within the gut are dysbiotic enough that they create the perfect environment for hyperpermeability to happen. So even just simple bacterial imbalances,
Right.
which result in some of the symptoms you're talking about, right? The gas, the
Exactly.
bloating, things that, or just general indigestion that people think is just normal, like everyone feels this way.
Right.
Um, so there's that, but the systemic symptoms I see a lot, skin for sure, and I
Hmm.
would I would put eczema on that list, and
Oh,
even
yes.
psoriasis, um, and headaches. Headaches are a big
Right.
one, and then yeah, of course, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, and anxiety for sure, depression, um, like you're saying, different mood disorders,
Hmm.
and then joint pain. So
Yeah, that's a huge one too.
chronic pain that people write off to, oh, I have a little arthritic pain. Well, yeah, sort of, maybe. Do you have an actual diagnosis of arthritis? If you don't, then it could be that your joint pain is actually because certain food antigens that don't belong in the bloodstream have gotten through, right?
Hmm.
And they're causing pain throughout the body.
I'm glad you mentioned the food sensitivity thing too, because there are a lot of people aware now that there is such a thing as a food sensitivity. We're not talking about allergies
Right.
here, even though some people refer to them as delayed
Mhm.
allergies. I just don't like to refer to them as allergies because that's a whole nother topic. But food sensitivities, and if you have food sensitivities, you have leaky gut.
Oh, yeah.
And you can keep playing whack-a-mole with foods and eliminating foods and keep eliminating. I'll never forget a few years ago, I met with someone. This was back when I was at the medical practice, and it was a male patient that came in. This poor guy was a year and a half into his journey of trying to find out what was going on. And he was actually kind of going from practitioner to practitioner to practitioner, which is really not a great idea. But by the time he came to me, he had done everything but food sensitivity testing. But here was the problem. He was down to only eating 12 foods and had only been eating
Oh,
12 foods for a year.
wow.
And that's not a great idea. You can't just keep eliminating food from your diet
Mhm.
thinking that's going to solve it. Sometimes you do have to eliminate foods, as you and I both know,
Sure.
but for some things, not all things, but for some things, that's a temporary solution while you work on healing your gut
Hmm.
so that when you kind of seal those junctures and those little microscopic perforations and the things that actually are leaky gut, you should be able to eat, I'll just say most food
Right.
without having an issue. So if
Right.
you have a lot of food sensitivities and you keep developing food sensitivities, I hear that a lot too, then you haven't fixed the underlying problem.
Right. And that's a good point because and I see this too that particularly now since so many different food panels are available. You see them on social media, it's like, hey, 180 foods. Like anyone ever eats 180 foods, but still, here
Yeah,
you go. We're going to test it all and then that's your answer to everything. And they've got really great commercials about real
yeah.
people waiting for the results and can't wait. We're going to have the answers. Like no, because the as you know, if you're sensitive to a lot of things, and we see it all the time, right? Where it's just
Yep.
like the whole panel's lit up and you're like, oh my God, great, these foods are the
Yeah.
problem. No,
No.
when you're super reactive and you have a lot of food sensitivities, that's more about your gut permeability and often poor digestion, which go hand in
Right.
hand. You're not breaking down the foods, and then those macro molecules, right? Those larger antigens are getting through the gut lining into the bloodstream where they don't belong. And of course, when something, even something healthy, like
Mhm.
cucumber, shows up in the bloodstream in a form that is not adequately broken down, it doesn't belong there. It's not absorbed through the gut
Right.
like nutrients are absorbed. It just bashes through the gut. Well, then, of course, the immune system goes, that doesn't belong, right? That's a
Mhm.
bad guy. So we're going to tag it and we're going to say it's an enemy. And every time we see it, we're going to go after it. And so now you've got food sensitivities running rampant.